want you to imagine like going to like some kind of an amusement park and you're going on like the biggest roller coaster ride that's there with the twists and the turns and the big drops and all that stuff. And then you go on to the kiddie rides. Well, the kiddie rides are safer. The kiddie rides are more stable, but they're not nearly as exciting as the big one. Well, that's exactly what's happening in a healthy dating environment after a narcissistic environment. So I'm going to give you a warning that my therapist gave me that if she hadn't given me, I probably would have completely sabotaged the relationship I'm currently in. Once you get out of toxic, narcissistic, and manipulative relationships, when you start to get into a healthy relationship, it's going to feel boring. Isn't that encouraging? Now, okay, let me explain why healthy relationships do feel boring, because she's right. She was 100% right. When I started dating my now fiance, there was this time period where and I wouldn't use the word boring, but it definitely felt unfamiliar. Like it felt like I just kept waiting for something to happen. But in some instances, I've talked to other people and they have actually felt like it was boring. And here's why. When you're in these tumultuous kind of relationships, there's these constant extreme highs and these extreme lows. And what we're often waiting for is we're actually waiting for the next high cycle to come, because that's what gets us through these extreme lows. The gaslighting, maybe the violent behavior, the walking on the eggshells, all of that. It's this hope that's been constantly reinforced to us that eventually it's going to get better. Like we can almost time it, because they work on essentially a cycle. So we know if I can just hold on for 2 more weeks, I know that the good is coming right around the corner. And when we have these extremes, unfortunately, our brain gets like an adrenaline rush almost from these extreme heights. Like they're exciting. And sometimes they do these kind of extreme grand gestures and all of that. But the problem is that it's completely unhealthy and completely unstable. If you're in any kind of relationship with any kind of human being, platonic or romantic or coworker, there's always up and downs to the relationships, but it shouldn't be these extreme highs and these extreme lows. There needs to be some level of regularity. So when you go from this, I want you to imagine going to some kind of an amusement park and you're going on the biggest roller coaster ride that's there with the twists and the turns and the big drops and all that stuff. And then you go on to the kiddie rides. Well, the kiddie rides are safer. The kiddie rides are more stable, but they're not nearly as exciting as the big one. Well, that's exactly what's happening in a healthy dating environment after a narcissistic environment. So I just want to make this very, very clear that if you do feel like you're kind of almost in this position where you're bored or something feels off or you're just waiting for the shoe to drop, take a step back for a second and really evaluate the situation. What is it that you're feeling? First of all, are you feeling bored? Well, why am I feeling bored? Is it because there's just no spark that's there? Is it because maybe you're just not physically attracted to this person, or is it just because there's not been any kind of major events that have happened and it's just been steady? And if it's just been steady, that's actually a great thing, but don't be scared of that. Actually appreciate that. Oftentimes what I realized when I was doing this inner reflection was that I was just feeling very fearful. I was fearful for the next shoe to drop. I was fearful that I was going to get screwed over again. I was fearful that my now fiance is lying to me just as much as this other person was lying to me. But I really had to do this compare and contrasting of the stories that my ex used to talk about versus the stories that my fiance is talking about. My fiance actually had evidence to back every story that he did. My ex didn't. The feeling of it being boring, that may or may not happen to you, but I can almost guarantee you that being fearful in the relationship is going to happen. It's a natural response. It's essentially a defense mechanism that you are doing to protect yourself from getting extremely hurt again, like we just did. What I would really encourage you to do is to release that control of the fear, release the need to control everything that happens with a person and just in life in general, because the reality of the situation is life is always going to have shoes that drop. May not always be in your relationship. It could be car problems. It could be money problems. It could be a death in the family. There's literally always going to be a shoe that drops, and we can't control that. But what we can control is how we respond to when the shoe does drop. So what I've learned from this whole experience is that if my now fiance had ever done anything or ever will do anything that was remotely how my ex was, I at least now know, yes, it'll still be painful, yes, it will still hurt, yes, it will still be disappointing, but I at least know deep down within me that his choices that do that, if he wakes up one day and decides like, nope, I don't see what Trey brings to the table, that's a reflection on him, and it's not a reflection on my worth and what I bring to the table. Dating after narcissism is extremely scary, and because of that, I will end with this. You will know when you're ready, and you will also know when you are not. So do not try to force yourself into it if you are not actually ready for it.